Hello and welcome to Swiftly Spoken, a fan-made Taylor Swift podcast in which we analyse her artistry, including her lyricism, music videos and full album retrospectives. As ever, we are your hosts Lisa and Cameron, and in this episode we're going to be discussing our initial thoughts and reactions to Red, Taylor's version. Okay, before we start discussing everything Red, Taylor's version, I thought I'd just quickly mention that we have not spoken to each other at all about Red, Taylor's version. So all of these reactions and discussions are legitimate and real. We've been putting it off for days so that we could record it, especially for you guys to hear our first reactions and thoughts about the album. So at this moment in time, Red has been out for 5 days. So we've definitely had enough days to kind of consume the album and properly start to form opinions and responses to all the songs, all the Vault songs, all the changes. So yeah, we're going to get into how we listened to Red initially, and then going through all of the songs and discussing all of our thoughts and opinions on them.
To begin, as we discussed back in episode 7, which will be like a couple of weeks ago by the time this episode is released, we discussed how we were going to listen to this album. So how we were going to take on the task of getting through the 30 songs, if we were going to go in like order, if we're going to go straight to the Vault tracks, or if we were going to go straight to that All Too Well 10-minute version. We also asked you guys over on Instagram how you were going to do it, and there was a lot of varied responses. Some people wanted to go, in order from State of Grace onwards. Other people wanted to go straight to the Vault. Other people are going to start at All Too Well, then go to the Vault, then go to like Red from the beginning. So how did you do it in the end, Cameron?
So I stuck to my initial plan of starting with All Too Well because, like I said, I just could not keep it off. And then after that point, I went through the whole album, and then in the listens that followed, I then just stuck with the Vault ones just so I could, because obviously they're new and exciting songs and you want to hear them over and over again. But yeah, no, I did stick with listening to All Too Well first. What did you do?
So I stuck with my plan as well, and though it was excruciating, I did listen from the beginning right to the bitter end with All Too Well
Gosh.
10-minute right at the end. So I went through 2 hours, but I'm glad I did it because I was excited, and as the time went on, I kind of like it. The build up to it was really, really, really fun. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I do agree. Even with, obviously, like I said, I did start with All Too Well 10-minute, but the
Hmm.
kind of build up to the Vault songs was so exciting. And I'm glad that I did start with All Too Well because, like I said, I think I wouldn't have been able to sit there and would have then interrupted the listen and just gone, oh, I need to listen to it now. So I'm glad I started with that and then worked kind of chronologically as such through the track list.
So one of your worries was if you started with All Too Well 10-minute version, you'd be stuck on it. Did that happen to you, or was you able to?
So I had 2 listens. I had
Right.
2 listens of All Too Well. So I had the initial listen and then I was like, I need to hear that again. I need to hear that again. So I did 2 and then I thought, okay, that's been 20 minutes. I can't do that again. So then I started on State of Grace. And then from that point onwards, I went through the album. And then again, when I got to All Too Well on that kind of first initial listen as such, but technically my third listen, I then replayed it again. So I
Yeah.
had 4 listens of it technically in my first listen. So no,
Right.
I did struggle with coming off of it, but I weaned myself off of it. It was like, no, let's go to State of Grace. How did
Yeah.
you manage with it?
So for me, because I started like with State of Grace and went through the whole album and got to All Too Well last, I was glad that I did that because I did get stuck on All Too Well. Like I listened to All Too Well last, and then I listened to it again, then I listened to it again.
Yeah,
So it kind of, and it, like we discussed in our previous episode, which is the All Too Well episode, it's very easy to listen to, even though it is 10 minutes long.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it doesn't feel that long, and you're so excited for the next bit and the next new bit and the even cooler lyric and the way that she says it this way, like, so yeah, it has a kind of addictive kind of like listening experience because you just want to keep hearing those new bits. And I'm glad that I listened to it that way, but I'm glad that I didn't just stay on it because otherwise I would have been there all day because 2 hours was a very long time.
Yeah, for sure.
And it was mad how I'd kind of got to about 8 o'clock and I was thinking, gosh, like I've literally just finished. Like,
So of course the album comes out, we're in Europe, so it came out for you at 5 a.m. It came out for me
yeah,
at 6 a.m. So when we say 8 o'clock, we mean like 8 a.m. in the morning. But
morning, yeah.
obviously, thinking of like American listeners as well, you guys must have been up until like 2 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah,
It's
and then again, that must be because what's quite good is at least you're awake. But I think I would
yeah,
really
that's true.
struggle. I think I would struggle to have it at night and then have to try and sleep and not be like, no, I just want to hear it again and again and again. Because yeah, it was quite hard to just come off of those songs because it was just so exciting hearing them. Because obviously we've never heard really anything like with the Fearless ones, as excited as I was, obviously lots of them we'd heard the demo tracks for. So
Right.
and obviously we had also heard You All Over Me and Mr. Perfectly Fine, Taylor's version, because they were obviously pre-released before the album itself came out. So it meant that the only one that I technically never heard anything of was Don't You. Whereas with Red, obviously, basically all of those Vault tracks, other than Babe and Better Man, we hadn't heard anything really of. So it was very exciting to hear them. And like I said, I think if I was an American fan and an American listener, I would really struggle to then go to sleep and sleep on it and then, you know, get any sleep because it felt like a kind of a kid on Christmas kind of excitement.
Yeah. So before we get into going through our opinions and thoughts about all of the different songs, if you are over on YouTube, you could leave us a comment letting us know how you listened to Red and how your experience listening for the first time was.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to discussing Red Taylor's version track list and give you all of our thoughts and opinions.
So the album opens up with State of Grace, and Taylor's version of State of Grace was just as amazing as the original version. I have to admit that State of Grace is my favourite song of Red. So I was very eager to listen to it, and that's kind of why I started from the start as well. And I think she did a brilliant job.
I do think that State of Grace, the thing that I was slightly confused about with my initial listen was that it didn't, I think it was something about the drums. I think because I was so
Right.
used to it, something about it, I was like, wait, this sounds really different. But then once the song had got started, like once the song had properly kind of, you know, because the song almost like evolves, doesn't it? It gets louder as it kind of goes.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was perfect. But my initial listen was like, oh, I think because, you know, like you've heard it a certain way for so many years that it is like, whoa, okay, this is slightly different. But no, I think Taylor did a very good job on State of Grace. Okay, so next is obviously the title track, which is Red. So what did you think of Red? How do you think it sounded in comparison to the original?
Again, there's very few songs that I was kind of very like shocked or let's say surprised by any
Yeah.
changes or anything. And Red for me was another one that I was pretty happy with. Like I think she did an amazing job at recreating. Did you find any differences?
Oh no, I really liked this version of Red, and I think it enhanced the original version. I think a lot of these songs on Red were really enhanced, and I think this was one of those. I really love the kind of guitar, and I think it sounded identical to the original, if not better.
Next in the track list, of course, we have Treacherous, which is quite a delicate song to redo. So what did you feel about that?
I genuinely think this is probably one of the best recreations. I know that Dan Wilson, who originally kind of wrote the song with Taylor, produced this version, and I think he just did an amazing job of reproducing it. And I think that it just sounds just as good as the original, and again, if not better. I think that they did a really, really, really good job of it, and I think it really. The thing that you're always slightly worried about is the songs that you've loved forever, that the new versions won't maybe live up or sound like the ones that you have grown up with. But I think what was really reassuring was that they just sounded better. They sounded more mature, and they just sounded more depth to them, which I feel like Treacherous was definitely one of those songs that was enhanced. Okay, so next is I Knew You Were Trouble, and like we discussed in one of our previous episodes, the snippet of I Knew You Were Trouble sounded just like the original, and obviously this version was produced by Shellback. The original was produced by Max Martin and Shellback, but the Taylor's version one was produced by Christopher Rowe and Shellback, and obviously Taylor. And I think that they did a really, really good job of recreating the sound of I Knew You Were Trouble.
Next, we have All Too Well, which again is something that we spoke about in depth in our previous episode, like the differences between the production of the 5-minute version of All Too Well, the standard one, and the 10-minute version of All Too Well, which shifts. It's quite sad to see how Nathan Chapman, he was a big producer of a lot of Taylor's country music, dating back right to the debut album. She wasn't able to work with him with these re-recordings, which is quite sad. But it is nice to see that she has a trusted country producer in Christopher Rowe that she was able to reproduce all of these songs so well with, because in my opinion, All Too Well was another one that really it sounded so similar.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then the track after 22 was also, like we said, produced by Christopher Rowe and Shellback, who obviously originally did it with Max Martin. And how are you feeling about this one? Because this was one of the ones, unlike All Too Well and the ones above, that we said sounded like the originals. This one was one that we were slightly worried about from the snippets that we'd heard, 22. So how did you feel about on your kind of first listen and now multiple listens of hearing 22?
Yeah, so as we mentioned in one of our episodes previously, we were kind of worried about 22. I do think that those snippets were more like a problem of Instagram, or maybe they were then re-edited. Even though I could hear slight differences in the production, I think it was still very, very well done. And obviously, we had Shellback as one of the original producers appearing again on 22, producing it for Taylor's version. So I didn't feel it was too different. How did you feel?
Yeah, no, I agree. I felt like, yeah, I think I was slightly dubious about it and maybe went in with that kind of thing of like, oh gosh, but actually it sounded very similar to the original. There was a slight difference with the kind of chorus pullback, and it did sound slightly,
Hmm.
it did have an element of echo feeling, but maybe that was intentional, and maybe that was because Taylor has said that she has tried to enhance the production in certain areas and enhance the pronunciation of lyrics, the way that she sings them if she can, to make them improve them, but not, drastically change them. Which obviously we'll
Hmm.
get on to a certain one.
Yes.
But no, I think that was maybe possibly intentional, or how it was meant to be. But
Another original Nathan Chapman produced track is I Almost Do, which once again was produced by Taylor and Christopher Rowe. And I do feel like this one kind of had more of a sadder vibe to it in the lyrics.
yes, I think that this song was one of the ones that was really, really enhanced, and I think that this version is so much sadder than the original, which
Right.
I think they did a really, really good job of enhancing this song even further and adding even more emotion into it. I think maybe with Taylor singing a lot of songs on Evermore and Folklore that have this kind of quite sad tone to them.
Melancholic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. This kind of melancholy feel that she has kind of become really good at creating that kind of sound with her voice, and I think that I Almost Do is a great example of that. And this is one of there's about 3 songs on this album that I felt were
There's a bit of a
so
shift.
much better than
Hmm.
the original. Yeah, and this is one of the ones that I think that was just enhanced massively, and that is obviously down to Taylor Swift and Christopher Rowe. So they did definitely a really good job on that.
So for We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together, my initial listen, I was very worried because there's just so few differences, especially the wheeze in the chorus that I couldn't quite get my head around. I'm sure that with more listens, I will get used to it in the end. There'll be no problems. But because it was a song that I've listened to so much throughout my whole life, those little differences, for now, they still kind of bother me a bit. How do you feel about them?
Totally agree. I think weirdly, unlike 22, which obviously Taylor is now in her 30s, 22 didn't feel like a 30-year-old singing it, if you know what I mean. But I
Hmm.
think We're Never Ever Getting Back Together for some reason just didn't really translate. But yeah, I think the wheeze was slightly different, and the talking bridge just didn't sound like Taylor for some reason. I was like, this just does not sound like Taylor at all. But I
Yeah,
think
it's
it was
it's
still like,
funny because she sung it so many times live, and when she sung it live, it always sounds very, very similar to studio version,
yeah,
like the way she's enunciated things. But yeah, it was mainly for me, it was that we in the chorus.
yeah, it does sound distinctly different from the original. But again, maybe that was totally intentional.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll grow on us either way. I think it's just because we're so used to the originals.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things. And Red is one of those albums that I have just digested hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. You just hear it a certain way. So when suddenly it's changed up, those differences are just so obvious, even though
Hmm.
maybe to a casual listener they're not obvious at all.
Next up, we have Stay, 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 which divides the fandom in many different ways. So, for me, production wise and lyric wise, and how Taylor sung it, I think it stays true to the original. However, I do feel it has so much more weight to it now that she is in a happy relationship. And, to be honest with you, this is going to sound really silly, but Stay, Stay, Stay was the first song as I was listening to the album that made me tear up a little bit, which is crazy considering I just listened to All Too Well.
So obviously, as you know, I'm not the biggest Stay 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 fan,
Yeah, I know.
but I love this version, and this really made me appreciate the song. Like, it felt just so much like more like you said, like it just had this warmth to it that the original I feel like
For
didn't.
sure.
And I feel like this as well, what I almost do in this song and another song were the three songs that I felt were just massively enhanced and were just like, whoa, this is so much better than the original. And I'm so glad I have this version because it did make me appreciate the song. um, I've always felt like Stay 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 felt a bit out of place on Red. I don't know why, but that's just always. And because I'm such a lover of Better Man, I was always like, why wasn't that on there? Or what, I've always felt like,
Right.
no, Stay 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 shouldn't, it doesn't deserve it. But I think that this version definitely does deserve its place. So I was really, really happy with this version,
Oh, I'm glad
because
that the
it has
re-recording
totally
done that.
changed
Yeah.
my perspective on it. And I think you're right that because Taylor is in such a kind of happy relationship, that it just felt really genuine, like really, really lovely, and it just felt really like heartwarming, and it just, I don't know, there was a lot more depth to it. Track 10 is The Last Time, featuring Gary Lightbody of Snow Patrol, and unlike the previous tracks, this one was not produced by Taylor, Christopher Rowe, Dan Wilson, or Shellback. It was instead produced by Jack Knifley. How are you feeling about this one? I know that we discussed privately because Gary Lightbody sometimes has confidence issues with performing on stage and can sometimes be a bit shaky. And I think his performance on The X Factor with Taylor was kind of clear of that he started off quite nervous. And I think both of us were worried maybe that his vocals wouldn't hold up. So how did you feel about The Last Time?
Firstly, I'm really, really glad that she was able to collaborate once again with Gary Lightbody, and I'm really happy when I see like all of these people that do want to go back and collaborate with her, and also join into the new collaborations, which we'll speak about in just a minute. But I am also glad that she was able to get Jack Knifley to produce it once again, because production-wise, it was just amazing. And I do feel like Gary did such a good job. It really did feel like the original to me. I was very, very happy about it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think he did an amazing job. His vocals were really strong. And again, this was one of the other ones that felt like it just had more depth to it.
Next, we have track 11, which is Holy Ground, which again is produced by the same person who produced it back when Red came out in 2012, which is Jeff Basker. And I've seen a lot of people be a bit think that Holy Ground is a bit controversial. It's not as, I heard people were saying it's not as joyful sounding as it was originally. How do you feel about that?
So yeah, the first I was reminiscing just the other day, didn't feel like it had the same hit. It didn't,
Right.
when I first listened, it didn't feel like it just hit you in the same way. But I felt like as the song developed, again with kind of State of Grace, I didn't see any differences later on in the song. I didn't really
No,
notice.
I
I
was
didn't.
pretty pleased with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't notice a different change of mood. I felt like it was pretty kind of happy still. But the initial, I was reminiscing just the other day, felt it didn't have the same hit for me, but maybe over time it kind of will. Next is Sad, Beautiful, Tragic, and this is the other song that I've been talking about that I felt was
Yep.
really, really enhanced. And I think, again, one of those reasons is because this one sounds so similar to the kind of folklore Evermore sound
Yeah.
that Taylor was just did an amazing job with this song. And again, this song had so much, it just had an even more kind of haunting feel to it. And I think it reminded me a bit of kind of My Tears Ricochet, that kind of feeling to it. That the original was amazing, and I love the original, and I wish that Sad, Beautiful, Tragic got more attention in the fandom, because I feel like sometimes it's forgotten. But I think that this Taylor's version of it was just amazing, really, really good. How did you feel about it?
Completely agree. Yeah, I was waiting for you. I was hoping that the third one you was going to mention was Sad, Beautiful, Tragic, because
Yeah,
I think it just comes with so much more weight to her vocals in it. And I do think it is because of it does have this similar sounding tone, and obviously lyric wise as well, to Folklore and Evermore and what she's been doing recently. So yeah, definitely enjoyed this one much more than the original, which is crazy because I absolutely love the original as well. Next, we have The Lucky One, which once again was produced by the same original producer. So again, I felt like she did a really good job on this one.
yeah, me too. I feel like this was another one that just sounded like the original was just perfect, really. I think, again, there was a slight enhancement and improvement on kind of vocals and sound, but I think that it was really, really good. I think they did an amazing job. Next is Everything Has Changed, obviously featuring Ed Sheeran, and we had an episode a while ago about Everything Has Changed, and we talked about our kind of hopes for Everything Has Changed, Taylor's version. And did our hopes and ambitions kind of for this song, did they come out the way that you expected? Did it sound how you wanted it
Yes.
to? Yeah.
Yes, I'm so pleased with this song, and I especially absolutely adore how they left that, because I was like, do you think they won't say the "Are you good to go?" But yes, he
Mm.
did, and I was so pleased about that because it really made me tear up a little bit. Once again, I know I tear up to all the happy songs. There you go. But yeah, as soon as I heard that, I was like, yes, and it sounded so good, so good.
Yes, I totally agree. And also obviously they kept the original album version with Ed only having kind of half the
Yes.
verse, which I wasn't sure. I just had a weird feeling that she might have given Ed the full verse. I don't know why I had that feeling, but I had a feeling. But I'm
Yeah,
glad that they stuck to the album one.
yeah. I
But
do
no,
hope we suddenly get a remix of it one day. You never
yes,
know.
we never know.
Track 15 is Starlight, and one of the producers have changed. However, once again, I think she did a pretty good job on this one. It still has that magical kind of sounding vocals. Yeah, really pretty song.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this one's a bit like the Lucky One. Sounded just like the original. Absolutely perfect. Yeah, I think it was a really, really good re-recording. Okay, and the final song on the original standard edition of Red is Begin Again. And I absolutely love this song. I think it's one of the best album closers of Taylor Swift's entire discography. And I think that the Taylor's version of this felt, again, so much more emotional. And I really, really loved this version. How did you feel?
I agree. I also felt it was more emotional. I don't quite know exactly why, because it sounds like kind of exactly the same, but I suppose just from a more mature perspective, her vocals, to be honest with you, I know we're discussing this one by one, but her vocals are better in every single song, I must
Yeah,
say.
I totally agree with you. I agree that, yeah, all the vocals are better. And I think that's maybe what enhanced the songs. And I think that this is something that we're probably going to see with like Debut and Speak Now.
Oh, for
um,
sure.
Especially with Debut. Obviously, Taylor's vocals on Debut are so vastly different to her kind of 2021 vocals. So I think that those songs will have a bit more depth to them, and maybe people will appreciate them a bit more because they'll just feel they just have a different feeling to them than the originals, even though they sound identical in some cases, like Begin Again, Starlight, The Lucky One. They just there's just something about them that's just really special. And I think what's quite nice is that they're almost, you've grown up with these versions, and then now you're being given these other versions that have more depth and perspective, and that if you've been a fan since then, you've had more depth and perspective since
Mm.
since the first time you ever listened to them. So it was really quite nice listening to them again, being older and having been a fan for that long and grown up with those versions, to hear these ones and think, oh, these ones are now the ones that I'm going to grow up with for the rest of my life. I just think that there's just something really special about the Taylor's versions of these songs.
Yeah, and it opens up the albums to people in the fandom who, became fans during, the Reputation era or Lover era onwards, and it opens up these albums to new fans as well. There's a lot of fans that are much younger in age, who probably weren't even alive, which is crazy to
No,
say, during the Debut era or the Fearless era. So it's nice. In a way, I know it's horrible to say because obviously this experience could have been avoided and she shouldn't have to do it from the beginning, but the way that she's approached it obviously has been very positive, and in a way I'm happy that it's happened because it gives every single one of her first six albums a new lease of life, and it just shows that they really do stand the test of time. They really do have a lot of magic to them, and especially the vault tracks and adding all the new bits to it really completes and paints the picture of the whole album. So the next four tracks that appear on Taylor's version of the album originally appeared on the deluxe edition of Red. We have The Moment I Knew, Come Back Be Here, Girl at Home, and State of Grace acoustic version. So, is there anyone that you would like to speak about, Cameron?
so obviously Moment I Knew and Come Back Be Here, I think, and State of Grace acoustic, just like the originals, perfect, really loved them. But
Yeah.
Girl at Home was a shock. When I
Yes.
first played it, I generally thought that I'd clicked on something else, and I was like, wait, and I clicked back and was like, what? And I thought, wait, this sounds like Closure. I was like, what? I was so confused. And I thought that because I bought it on iTunes and was listening on iTunes, but obviously on Apple Music, and I thought that it downloaded wrong. So I was like, wait, this is really odd. I'm going to go on YouTube and double check that that's how it does sound. And then went on YouTube and was like, what? Oh, okay, this is
Yeah.
how it is. I was so confused, and I'm still unsure about it. I think that
Yeah.
Taylor did it because Girl at Home is not a very popular song in the fandom, and she probably understands that. and a lot of people aren't keen on the production, aren't keen on the lyrics or the message of the song. So I think that she felt like, because no one has much attachment to the song, and I've never known anyone that is a girl at home stan as such, or it's their number one Taylor Swift song, she felt like this was the one that she could play around with and enhance. And I think that she did do that. Obviously she used the person that remixed the Love Story.
Willow.
Yeah, Willow and Love Story for, was it Fearless? I'm just not sure. I'm really not sure, because I've just grown up with the original.
Yeah.
But this version I do prefer, but I just find it, I just am like, I find it a bit jarring. I was just so confused by it that even now I'm like, wait,
kind of like
I feel like we're in a club. I was like, what? We've just come
Yeah.
from Come Back Be Here and then go into a club and then go into acoustic State of Grace. I was just like,
Right?
what on earth? How did you feel?
Yeah, so I agree with you. The moment I knew Come Back Be Here and State of Grace acoustic version, which again, one of my favorite songs ever, they were all done beautifully, and they're all like they stayed true to their original selves. But yeah, it was so jarring to have them three be so exactly the same and then get Girl at Home completely remixed, because that's what it felt like. It was a Girl at
Yeah.
Home remix. To be honest with you, I like it more. I really enjoy it. I mean, I'd never had much of attachment to Girl at Home. I do like the song, but I don't know. I feel like I kind of like this. I kind of like the remix. However, if there are people out there like you that do enjoy the original version but don't really want to listen to the original version, I have seen that there is a YouTube account that has taken Girl at Home Taylor's version vocals and put it with like a more of a country, like the original kind of country mix behind it. So maybe you could check that out and see.
Okay, so the next track is Ronan, and I'm really glad that Taylor put this song onto Red and that she kind of took the song back. I know that Ronan's mother was really happy about this song being on Red and it having a permanent home. So I think that was really nice of Taylor to give it a permanent home, and and I think she really did it for Ronan's mother, and I think that is who this song is for and why
Yep.
it is on this album, and I think that's a really nice thing that Taylor's done.
Now we are heading into the Vault tracks. So firstly, starting off with Better Man. Obviously, we had only ever heard Little Big Town's version of Better Man, and we discussed how we thought it would sound in one of our previous episodes and our expectations and hopes for it. And did it live up to those expectations for you,
Oh,
Cameron?
definitely. Obviously Aaron Dessner, who did a lot of folklore on Evermore, produced this song, and I think he just added this kind of ethereal kind of magic to it that it just felt even better than the Little Big Town version, even better than the demo version, the original 2012 one, and even better than the performance that Taylor did for it at the Bluebird Cafe. So I feel like this is the version of Better Man, and I just think it was amazing production, and also
Yeah.
Liz and Caitlin from Taylor's band are the backing vocals on this. So back in kind of the original Agency band. So I think that's really lovely that she brought those back to sing on this song, and I think that it just kind of adds to the magic of this song.
With Better Man, an interesting fact that Taylor recently said in one of the little Amazon clips that you get if you ask Alexa to play Taylor's version, she mentioned that Better Man, she believed, was initially cut from the album because she placed All Too Well on the album. So it was kind of like this toss up between either placing Better Man or All Too Well on the album. I'm so glad the album now has both. But can you imagine if she hadn't put All Too Well on the album and we would have got Better Man instead in 2012?
Oh my gosh, I love Better Man, but I always felt like the reason Better Man never got on there was because of I Almost Do. I always felt like it was
Right.
between those two, and that I Almost Do was chosen. But now I realise that I Bet You Think About Me was the competitor. So now obviously I realise that was its competitor. But back, when Taylor kind of first gave Better Man to Little Big Town, I thought that it was competing against I Almost Do, but that's interesting that it was All Too Well. And I'm glad that it didn't. I'm glad that All Too Well had its place, because that is the kind of Red song, and that is just the superior song. But I'm so glad that Better Man now has its place, because I just love that song. So the next song on the track list is Nothing New, featuring Phoebe Bridgers. And again, this one was produced by Aaron Dessner. And how did you feel about this track? This is obviously the first new track that we haven't actually heard. So how was your first reaction to hearing Phoebe on the song and the song itself?
So, firstly, I'd like to say that we called this because we both said like we thought that quite a few of these vault tracks would be produced by Jack and Aaron, just because they are Taylor's go-to producers right now, especially for her newer music. And I do feel like this is probably the song that most sounds similar to Folklore and Evermore in terms of production, because obviously Aaron and Jack do produce like Message in a Bottle or Forever Winter, but I feel like they do have more of a Red sound to them,
Yeah.
whereas Nothing New for Me does sound like Evermore basically. And I love it. I really, really enjoyed it. I
Yep.
really loved how Phoebe featured in it. I'm so glad that she was more of a prominent feature.
Yep.
And obviously the lyrics are just amazing, really, really haunting. Such a deep song was cut originally from Red.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that there couldn't have been anyone more perfect for that song. I think that Phoebe Bridgers just did an amazing job, and her and Taylor's vocals together just sounded amazing, like together. And yeah, this song, weirdly, even though it is the one that kind of sounds most similar to Folklore Evermore, I still feel like it has that kind of Red feeling. I think because of the lyrics feel very Red, for me, it doesn't, unlike some of the Vault songs on Fearless that do, for me, don't sound like Fearless songs because of the way that they've been produced, like Don't You. I feel like this one still feels like a Red song, even though it does have that kind of more modern Taylor Swift production as such. But no, I think that this song, yeah, the depth of the lyrics are just amazing, and it's a shame that it was kept off the original. But I think maybe the lyrics had too much kind of depth and spoke too much about women in the music industry that maybe at that moment in time Taylor didn't feel comfortable talking about that openly. And as she was starting to feel a bit kind of uncomfortable with her position in the music industry, maybe not to rock the boat. So maybe it was almost a bit too personal as such. With songs like The Man and stuff that Taylor's released now, this is almost like a kind of very early form of. So I think maybe that was why it was possibly kept off the original. Taylor's vocals and Phoebe's vocals are just so haunting and sound amazing together. And like you said, I'm so glad that a female collaborator and a featured artist got a verse and a chorus, which is so good. I'm really, really glad that we got to properly hear rather than just a kind of backing vocal.
Track 24 is Babe, which is another song that we had obviously heard previously by Sugarland. But now we have Taylor as the main singer, not just the backing singer. And we have some changes in this song as well. For
Yes.
example, the little "What about your promises"
Yes.
lyric.
When that snippet was released, I was actually shopping. I was in a shopping mall, and you sent me the message being like, "You need to hear it. You need to hear it. You need to hear it." And I was like, "Whoa!" Like those, I really love those new enhanced lyrics. And Jack produced this song, Jack Antonoff, and I think he just did an amazing job of producing it. It's kind of got like what sounds like trumpets or something at one point.
Yes, yeah.
Which I wouldn't think would sound right on Babe, but I think it just sounds so good. I really, really think that this version is so much better than the one that we had from Sugarland. And also the kind of harshness of Babe, 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 where it kind of like in the Sugarland one, they kind of took out, which I quite like. It has a softer feel to it. And I really, really like this version, and I'm really glad it's on.
And I do really like that repeating, echoey, "What about your promises" lyric.
Yes.
I think it's so like memorable as well. It like really sticks in your memory. So yeah, I really like how she changed those little things up and made her version her version.
Okay, so the next track is Message in a Bottle, which obviously was written by Taylor, Max Martin, and Johan Shellback. And this song, I was just in shock. I thought this is so cool, like just the coolest song ever. Like this was the first song that the three of them wrote together before I Knew Your Trouble, before 22, and I'm so glad that we finally get to hear it. What are your opinions on it?
Yeah, for sure. So Taylor mentioned that, like you said, this is the first song they wrote together. So I think there's a lot of theories about how this was the song that they were writing when they were interrupted by some person who was friends with Taylor's ex, and then We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together came about.
Yes.
So I'm glad that this song has finally seen the light because I think it's such a sweet song. I don't know, I really enjoy it. I know it's so poppy and so different, but at the same time, we've already spoken about Red being like this eclectic mix of pop, country, a bit of this, a bit of that. So I do think it fits. And also, Message in a Bottle is kind of something that she teased a lot during the Red era.
Yes, she
Looking
mentioned.
back at it,
Yes.
she's mentioned, which I'm sure is what you were going to say, she mentioned songs being like messages in a bottle that you send out, on a couple of occasions. One, I think it was at a Target, the Red release at
Yep.
Target, where she spoke about it, and she was very coy. She didn't say any more. And then another time during the Red tour. So
I think it was
definitely, it was,
before All Too Well in Sydney, I think. In Australia somewhere, I think she said.
there
I'm
you
sure it
go.
was
Yeah.
there.
So she definitely had it in her mind, and definitely had this imagery of Red having these songs that were like messages in a bottle. So I'm glad that we've got the song,
This one.
the actual
Mm.
message in a bottle.
Also, what I think is quite interesting is in interviews she's been saying that some of the reasons why Vault tracks were kept off of the album was because they were intended for the next one, and I think that this was intended for 1989, hence why she kept teasing
Yeah.
it
Mm-hmm.
during the kind of Red era, because then she was hoping that it would be on 1989 and people would be like, oh my god, she's been saying this word for ages, this phrase, message in a bottle, but obviously then 1989 just became something so different that it had outgrown even this sound,
Right.
even this kind of pop sound. Obviously it enhanced even more to a kind of 80s pop sound, but yeah, no, I'm really glad we got to hear this song, and it's probably one of my favorites on the Vault.
For sure, and I do feel like it is very much a prequel to 1989. So yeah, it's great. Next, we have I Bet You Think About Me, which obviously has become much more than just a Vault track because we've got a whole MV for it and everything, and it is featuring Chris Stapleton. I love this song. It's so blatantly country, and she puts that country accent on, which I love that for her. And it is, like you said, it mimics or echoes a lot of the same thoughts in I Almost Do, but in such a different tone. Just like in this, she's taken the mick, basically,
Yeah,
very ironic. I
yeah.
love it.
Rather than, yeah, I Almost Do is almost like a sad, like, do you think about me? Like, please tell me you think about me. Whereas this is like, yeah, you think about me. Like, come on.
Yeah.
And I just love, and also the parallels to We're Never Ever Getting Back Together with the indie concert, indie concerts
Yes.
that you go to every week and all those kind of things. I loved it. I think this is such a cool song, and I love that it's so country, so country. Like, this is probably one of Taylor's most country songs ever. Like, it just sounds like you could have put it on debut and it would have fitted.
It would have
Like,
fit, yeah.
because it just is so country, and I'm glad that she put Chris Stapleton on it. Even though obviously we talk a lot about, whether featured artists are kind of more backing vocals or actually deemed a feature, and I'm glad that Chris Stapleton was actually backing rather than. I feel like this song doesn't feel like it has I don't feel like it has two perspectives. I think it's a very singular perspective. So I'm glad that he was kept as kind of more a backing vocal rather than, like a proper feature like Phoebe. Whereas Nothing New, I think, really Phoebe enhanced that song. And whereas Chris Stapleton enhanced I Bet You Think About Me, but I'm glad that
Oh,
it
for
was
sure,
mainly
but in a
Taylor
different
singing.
way.
Yeah, I think it's almost like Marcus Mumford on Cowboy Like Me. I think that he really enhanced that song by being backing vocals, and I think Chris Stapleton did the same thing, and he added to that country feel about it, and obviously the music video for this song is amazing, and we will probably do a proper Easter egg breakdown and discussion of I Bet You Think About Me music video, because there is so much to talk about. But yeah, no, we'll possibly save that for a future episode. Okay, so the next song is Forever Winter, which was written by Taylor and Mark Foster, who wrote Pumped Up Kicks. And this song was also produced by Jack Antonoff. How do you feel about Forever Winter?
I really like it. I really love when these songs from such a long time ago see the light, and I think Mark Foster back then was really pleased with it, and it's kind of a shame that it got axed from Red. It does sound different. It does have kind of like a different tone to it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
But
I totally agree.
from the rest of Red, I mean, but
Yeah.
I love the production on it as well, and I really love that little trumpet sound. I love that.
Yeah, no, I do really like this song. Again, it feels very different from Red, but I'm glad that we kind of got it on the vault. It's a really good song, and I thoroughly enjoy the kind of the production. And I'm glad that this song has been talked about a lot. Obviously, we didn't know the name, but we did know that she wrote with Mark, and I'm glad that we finally got to hear it after all these years. And I think that's what's quite nice about these vault tracks, is that some of the things that have been talked about, even with Babe, when we got to hear Babe, we knew about Babe, but we never obviously got to hear it. And then we got to hear it with Sugarland, and now we get to hear kind of Taylor's proper version of it. And like we discussed on our previous episode, going back to Babe, is whether that lyric, "What About All Your Promises," was on the original version of Babe, or is something that Taylor's added. And it's interesting to wonder whether maybe in some of these other songs where we've never heard them before, if there has been slight enhances on
Changes, yeah.
lyrics, because obviously with the Fearless Vault songs we know that there was changes in the lyrics, and I wonder if some of these possibly have slight changes from the original. Obviously we'll never know.
Another thing we must commend Taylor about for Forever Winter is how it deals with mental health, and that's something that it wasn't really a theme that ran or was spoken about in Red, but from 1989 onwards, like with songs like Clean, and then obviously many songs on Lover that also deal kind of like The Archer with mental health and having someone there for you even though you don't realize it. It kind of reminds me in a way of Renegade, but kind of from a different perspective. But if you know what I mean, like
Yeah,
dealing
I
with those
agree.
kind of
Yeah.
themes. So I enjoy that this song is out now. It kind of takes on a whole new meaning and depth to it now, especially. The final collaboration that we get from the Vault is one that we spoke about a couple of episodes ago as well in our Everything Has Changed episode, that we were really excited for the other Ed Sheeran collaboration. And again, we called it, we both said that we thought it was going to be more of an acoustic kind of song. And then
Yep.
you remarked on the fact that this was a song that they wrote like the first time that they met each other in a hotel room and they were playing guitars. And yeah, you know what this is going to be. I don't know if this is a controversial opinion, but I think I like Run more than Everything Has Changed.
Really, really. Oh no. See, for me, everything has changed. Is I prefer it over Run.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for
Maybe
me,
I'm just getting carried away,
yeah,
but
I know. I really do like Run, and it is what I expect. I think that's the thing. It's exactly what I expected in a good way, like in a really, really good way. This is what I wanted from this song, and that's what we got. But for
yeah.
me, I think there's so much nostalgia for me with Everything Has Changed. The Run obviously doesn't have yet. It's only been out at this moment in time 5 days, so there's
Right,
no
yeah, of
kind of
course.
nostalgia and history with it. So I'm really glad that we have it, and I really do love it.
Hmm.
But for me, Everything Has Changed still holds up. But I really do love Run.
Oh,
I
of
think it's
course.
really sweet.
Of course, I do still love Everything That's Changed, but I just feel like maybe in terms of lyricism, and also in terms of like how much they both sing, I feel like this one sounds more of a conversation between them more than Everything Has
Yeah.
Changed. I don't know,
One
but
thing that I did feel about this song is that it's reminded me so much of Small Bump off of Ed's first album.
yeah, that's
It
true.
literally when I was listening to it, I was like, this just sounds like a track off of Ed's first album. It just reminded me so much of Small Bump. So yeah, I think that was what was really nice about it as well, is that it felt like 2012 kind of Ed Taylor. Okay, so the next track is The Very First Night, and I think this song is so cool. Again, it's kind of a message in a bottle kind of vibe, and
Yeah.
I am so, so glad that we got to hear it. Such a cool sound, production. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And obviously, I must mention here there are so many lyrical parallels between The Very First Night and many 1989 songs, especially
Yes.
Out of the Woods. Very interesting. Maybe we can analyze that at some point in the future. But I do feel like this was kind of, again, more of like a prequel to 1989, but with still that Red kind of sound that we hear in
Yep.
songs like Treacherous or Come Back Be Here. So yeah, that it kind of gives me the same thematical images, and I absolutely love it. I must say this is one of my favorite from the Vault
Same.
songs that we got.
Definitely the same. I feel that this one and Message in a Bottle just have such a fun vibe to them.
So the last song on the album is of course All Too Well, the 10-minute version. For all of our thoughts on that song, you can listen to our previous episode, which is all about All Too Well and a lyrical breakdown and all of our reactions, opinions, theories. So with that, we reach the end of this album. I really do think all of these songs, especially the Vault songs, of course, add this new dimension to Red as a whole. But if you had to choose, which is your favorite from the Vault song from Red?
Oh, it's really hard. I think because I just love the song so much, probably Better Man. But out of the kind of new ones, it's a kind of big toss up between like Message in a Bottle, The Very First Night,
Mm-hmm.
Nothing New. Oh, can I say all of them? I think out of what we've had so far from Fearless, Taylor's version, and Red Taylor's version, the Red Vault is just insane. Like all of those songs are just amazing. So it's really, really hard to pick one. What would you? Could you pick one if you had to?
Again, of course, it's very, very hard. But I think right now, me in the present at this moment, which will probably change in a week's time, would probably have to go for either Run or The Very First Night because I just really enjoy them as really
Yeah.
sweet songs. But again, probably in 2 days' time, I mean, I love everyone. Nothing
Yeah.
New is so good.
Good.
Obviously, All Too Well, which we've discussed,
Yeah,
is
All
so,
Too
so
Well. All
good.
Too Well is my favourite out of all of them, but I don't
Yeah.
really deem it a Vault one. I know that sounds
No, we
weird,
have to
but
leave that apart because it's
yeah,
in a league. It's in a league of its
of
own.
its own, yeah.
Mm.
But no, yeah, I think all of the literally every single Vault song is just such like some of the top tier songs in Taylor's entire career. Really, I think they're just on another level, absolutely amazing. And they show such a. I think the Vault tracks on Red just show every single kind of range of Taylor: the country, the pop, the kind of folky, haunting, sad songs. I just think everything that is amazing about Taylor Swift is on the Red Vault. Okay, we've come to the end of this episode. Thank you very much for listening. We thoroughly enjoyed going through all of the Red Taylor's version tracks. Make sure you check out our YouTube channel at Swiftly Spoken Podcast, and make sure you subscribe and like some of our videos if you enjoyed listening and watching. And also check out our Instagram, which is also at Swiftly Spoken Podcast.